For the record, your name is Xavier Collins, correct?
Yes.
You have 2 children, James and Presley.
Yes.
When did you last see Cal Bradford alive?
I walked the president to his room when he turned in at 22:04.
You don't approve?
Those things would kill you.
Yeah. Well, they can get in line.
Hi, my name is Marcus Jones. I'm the awards editor at IndieWire. This is our Pass the Remote panel, and today we're talking Paradise. Our guests are director Glenn Ficarra, director John Requa, composer Siddhartha Khosla, and editor Julia Grove. Well, let's jump in with a little blast from the past. You all worked on Dan Fogelman's other breakout hit, This Is Us. A very different show. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah, mostly.
But I was wondering, was there anything from that experience or just elements of that show that carried over into the work you did on Paradise? We can start, how about with John and Glenn?
Well, I think the humanity of it, I think, is the thing that really carried over.
I think it's Dan's perspective and Dan's style of of the past being playing in the present, and characters may disappear or die, but they're not gone emotionally, sort of like the residue of human existence, and all that kind of Dan Fogelman style pointed at a different subject, and I'm curious to see what he does with other subject matters, because it's just it's just a unique perspective that he has.
Yeah. How about Julia?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of crossover. I guess I would almost see it like the new kind of mystery and the thriller element of Paradise is kind of like the brain forward part, is how I approach it. And then the kind of like soul, what I bring to my approach in cutting this is definitely a carried over from This Is Us. Just like John said, and everyone said, the humanity, the sense of loss, that feels very continuous, working, and obviously guided by Dan.
If I decide to tell...
What? Say it to my face. I want to see what it looks like when you have balls, sir.
It's fine.
And Siddhartha, I wonder, especially in your work, like this also being a Sterling K. Brown show, like, does he inspire any specific instruments, or is it kind of looking at the full overview?
I mean, Sterling doesn't really inspire the instruments. I mean, he just inspires you to sort of like do your best work. I mean, he's so incredibly gifted and talented, and I just think he's like, he's such a superstar, and just getting to work for him and support his performances 2 shows in a row is pretty cool. We've seen how different he is show to show as well. He's a completely different character here. I mean, I can't even, like, I think the other day I was talking to somebody about This Is Us, and I was just showing them something, and I saw Randall with his glasses, and I was like, I just don't recognize that Sterling at all.
Yeah.
He's such a chameleon, and he's able to switch like that. And but yeah, and to echo what everyone else said, this is very character driven. It's very grounded, and then for me, it just ends up being very thematic in terms of the material. I can sort of find themes that we can weave in over and over again, and melodies that sort of repeat.
Yeah. And I think as an audience member, one thing for me that I saw carry over is, of course, this is another show that has twists and turns. I think before, I should probably put like a spoiler warning for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. But just to start, like, you can already tell from the first few minutes of Paradise that there's something kind of uncanny going on. Were you trying to establish that? Like,
Yeah, I think the designing the world is, probably the biggest lift on the show, and then that was there was a lot to consider from a story point of view, and I think with John, it struck him like, maybe the artificiality of a backlot is exactly what we're looking for, short of shooting at the Grove or something like that, which probably would be what it would be like. Uh, it's the perfect sort of representation of reality that doesn't quite look real.
Yeah. And John, what is it like on shooting days? Is it that conversation of like, keep in mind, this is what we're going for. So like
Yeah.
do it, but like have it back here.
Well, when you shoot on the back lot, we shot at Warner principally for the pilot. You're always like, oh, it crushes you because all realism goes flying out the window, and you're really struggling with your team, your production designer, to and your cinematographer to get the sense of reality, and don't shoot that and don't shoot this, and let's make sure that this, and let's give lots of this greens and all this other stuff in there. And this one we're like, you know what, let's embrace it. let's let's make let's make the audience go, wow, that's a little weird. What's going on? It feels a little artificial, to the point where in post-production, we smoothed out the concrete. There were cracks in the concrete, so we
And make
smoothed
it
out the
more
concrete to make it look more new and manufactured. And we found this place up in Santa Clarita that was this sort of planned community that was just sort of manufactured and didn't seem quite right. We just wanted the audience. We didn't want the audience to go, "This is a phony world." We just wanted the audience to go, just feel a little. And we felt like we could hide behind convention of storytelling and filmmaking in Hollywood that people are used to seeing, kind of hide behind that. And so they would just go, oh, well, this looks like a lot of shows I've seen, not real. It feels like it's shot in the back lot, and then reveal like, oh, well, no, it's because it is actually
Yeah.
a manufactured world.
Yeah, and I think the sort of major death right at the beginning helps it because at first it's like, what's weird? Oh yeah, something bad just happened.
Well,
And
also, I think it distracts you from
yeah,
thinking too hard about what's going on in the world. There's a lot of little flaws in the sky and all that stuff that I don't think a lot of people pick up on, but because you're busy, you're in the story, which is nice.
yeah, merits a second viewing. Julia, was that sort of like uncanny tone? I'm just using this word again. Something that was a through line through the premiere episode in particular, or because it's this mix of different times, because we're looking back at like what happened even days earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think we spent a lot of time just exploring what the first like 10 minutes of the episode should feel like, kind of up until you see Cal on the floor, because that really is setting up the tone. And to the point of what John and Glenn were talking about that run, Xavier's run through that community. I think you guys remember we played with like, at one point we had very kind of minimal atmospheric score that really leaned into that feeling of like almost dread or someone's watch surveillance, which is another like kind of like theme that we try to, or feeling we try to evoke. But ultimately, we thought it was that sequence was a great way to introduce like to Sid's like our musical theme, our score,
Yeah.
and I mean, the Paradise theme, I think we all agree is so evocative, and what I love about Sid's score in general, working on This Is Us, is like we always go back to this word nostalgia or memory, and it automatically makes you feel like it's speaking to a past experience. And so I think whether you're aware of it or not, it's feeling like it's commenting on something that has happened and that we will reveal down the line. So I think, yeah, and then he goes on that run and he talks to Billy for a little bit. Who's this guy? Like, where is he? Then we have this very kind of normalized scene with his family in a kitchen, but we
Yeah.
wanted that to feel a little off too. Like, well, you just get the sense that he's kind of an internalized man,
Right.
talking about the difference of like a Randall Pearson is very cool to like see Sterling pull that off. And then, yeah, of course, the reveal of Cal on the floor. And then you're kind of just off to the races, and you don't go outside really after that. So, like Glenn, I think Glenn, you said, like, you kind of luckily stop asking questions about where you are, and you're
Yeah.
just pulled into the world. And then I think tonally it just becomes very much more clear and straightforward, at least in the pilot until the end.
Mr. President, I'm coming in.
Yeah, and Sid, talk a little more about like establishing that score because Julia just kind of alluded to it, but I also was wondering if there's anything about the music that is giving clues as what's to come, just in even in the feeling of it.
I think it's sort of, the fun part about working with Glenn and John and Julia and Dan is that it's such a collaboration, like even before they start shooting too. So I started writing thematic material for months before we ever shot a frame of anything, and it would go through Glenn and John and Dan, and most of it was through Glenn and John in terms of like, getting feedback from them, and they knew in their brains sort of like what they wanted the score to feel like. And so they just talked me through stuff. They're like, there was a moment where the guys were like, we want to feel like we are perpetually trapped also in this world. And what does that feel like? And so, I mean, they would just be like, give me like a tonal bed that like literally does not move for 30 seconds. And then it moves again at 30 seconds and then moves again later on. And so it was, so then they could have the ability inside the edit with Julia, and Julia could have that tool available to her as well to cut with. And what I love about this collaboration is that, I mean, I always say this, like I learned how to score. I didn't go to school for this stuff. I was in a band. So like I learned how to score like film and television through John and Glenn. Like they taught me on the This Is Us pilot. Like I learned something very valuable and I carry it with me always. And it's like you're scoring to the subtext of why these characters are here, not to like what's happening on the scene in the script and right in that exact moment. And that's to Julia's point, is that why are we hearing this like this soaring da da dee 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 da 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 as he's running? Like why would we? But score can be subjective and it can be commenting on something else, on the underbelly of the world, or like the sort of bucolic nature of this sort of perfect world that they're in, or whatever, And so I don't know. And it's a long way of saying that I love working with all these people, and we find there's like the score is not like there's no clues in it really. It's just it feels like that in retrospect,
Pretty heavy there, old man.
I'm breathing just fine.
Especially as you get further into the season, you never quite fully know like what part of the timeline you're on. And so is that something that you guys really got to play around with?
Episode 104, it was a very unique episode because we follow this character who we are thinking is a baddie, like going into it, but we also don't know much about him. And then it's really his origin story in a way, but it's not told through his eyes. That episode is really tracking Xavier sleuthing and getting to the bottom of like, what is this real, what is Billy's backstory? And then it kind of those perspectives come together in the end. So that one, yeah, I do remember feeling a little like confused about the time, as I was cutting it. I was like, okay, because this is like 3 months. We see the arrival day, we see
Right.
like a month later, 2 months later, like Cal's in the bar, like just lamenting that everyone's lost their spirit down there. And then that big reveal at the end when we go to the nuclear winter and see Billy up there with the survivors. So that was a really cool reveal to play.
Yeah.
And just the manipulation of time as this mosaic of his life and ultimate death. And yeah, that was I feel like maybe one of the episodes that had the most time jumps. I can't remember.
There's this thing in editorial that you call an L cut, which is you hear the scene that's coming, you hear it kind of burbling under the surface, and you hear pieces of it, and then at some point you cut to the scene. And I feel like that sort of storytelling is I do feel like, I mean, Dan and Glenn and I have been doing it, but I also feel like that's sort of modern storytelling. I don't feel like it's just us. I feel like that's just sort of the way it is nowadays. And it's rare to see some linear story that you don't get at least a glimpse of the past or the future.
Yeah.
But I do think it closely approximates the human condition, which is we're not just living in the moment. There's entire religions that exist trying to get people to live in the moment, but people don't live in the moment. They live they're in the past and are projecting themselves into the future. They're haunted. They're terrified. That's part of being a human being. And I feel like the thrust of modern storytelling, particularly in TV, is to sort of more closely approximate what it is, just to walk around with all this stuff that we all do all the time, banging around in our head.
Yeah, that makes sense because I'd say I feel like a more active viewer, like following Xavier along, trying to put the pieces together. And I think that's because of the great execution from you all.
Oh, thank you.
It's nice.
Speaking to that, a standout episode is the penultimate episode, which is mostly fully like just in the flashback on the day where we find out kind of exactly what happened that led everyone to paradise. With that in particular, I mean, what were the conversations there around capturing it? Because I have been describing it as like kind of the best 90s action throwback that I've seen on TV. That felt like the most unique aspect of it. Like, am I watching Independence Day on Hulu?
Yeah, I think because of the human nature of the story, the idea was to stay with the characters and just never leave them and never go into the big, Independence Day shots, like, like you're not, cutting to Paris and seeing what's happening, right? Everything is as it comes to the characters, which I think makes it more immediate, more visceral, and
informed by COVID, I think.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I think that sense of perspective that we all had for a year of
living your life
living your life and getting these little glimmers of what's happening in the world, and the fear and the suspicion and just the lack of information. I feel like it's just, we all went through that for a year or longer. And so I think it was sort of informed by that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot of the early feedback I remember hearing from like Dom and people who had seen early cuts. And I didn't even think about that when I was cutting it. I don't know, I just guess was so focused on the story at hand, but how parallel, how much that would evoke the feelings we all felt, the unknowns and the kind of the fear. Yeah.
Yeah, and Sid gave us the greatest score, which is just this nail biting score.
Increasing a heartbeat.
Oh, thank you.
You should talk about that, Sid.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, in that episode, that was like one of the most fun episodes to score like I've ever worked on, and it was very minimal. It wasn't like a ton going on in the score, but it's also that like the way that was shot. I remember like either John or Glenn, we were at like a dinner and you were giving me a heads up about the aspect ratio changing for that episode, right? Something like that. And then when I saw the episode, like, I mean, it'd be very nice to compliment the score, but I will say that if you watch that episode without any music and you just watched it dry, it worked. Like, it was already there. It had the pacing and the tension. I mean, I was like literally like holding my breath through a lot of these scenes because I felt like we were inside, like we were so close with everybody. I felt like we were in like a little documentary in a way. And so I just had to provide enough sort of minimal, low grade tension that wouldn't tip it too much. And then I had to save the sort of, obviously, like the big nuke moment in the final act. Through that whole final act, that needed to be obviously a big score moment to hit the sort of emotionality of all that. That was like the emotional release of the episode really there. Whereas the entire time it was like a ticking clock that just never stopped. I think it was like, well, I mean, I felt like it was like an hour's worth of music in a 45-minute episode. It just was a lot. And, but it was just, you know, when you have good picture and good writing and good editing, it's like, it's the best. I'm not trying to fabricate anything, you know? So that's like, and I felt that way on This Is Us a lot too. I didn't have to there was these beautiful, grandiose monologues and like these moments. And I was like, there's enough emotionality here. I don't have to I just have to open the tear ducts just a little bit with the score. It's like my goal, not to like hit you over the head with it. So, you know, it was a good collaboration. It was just great work all around, and it just sort of made everybody's work shine.
Look at what you let happen! That's enough! If you don't want a seat on that plane, there's roughly 8 billion people on this planet who will fucking take it! Your wife is gone, and I'm sorry, but you need to process that. And go be with your children because they just lost their mother.
What are the strategies of capturing something that feels of that scale? Because throughout the season, we're mostly stuck in paradise. And so it is like a little bit trapped in this one place. But here, it's the whole country, the whole world that we're seeing. And so, but it's still like a TV show. And so it's this, like I said, incredibly unique thing to feel like, how did they pull off something that feels this big? And I think Sid's music is part of that, but I'd love to hear a little bit more from you all as well.
Really, it's all just a sort of suggestion, I think. And we pick our moments to sort of go big, but, you know, practicalities of, you know, on a television budget to go shoot, you know, world destruction on, after you're already doing an Armageddon show is challenging. And so, you know, you're almost, by going smaller, you're making it bigger, because I think, you know, like Spielberg War of the Worlds is a really good one. It's all, you know, it's this big story and all this shit is going on, but it's all told from eye level. You know, it's not, there's no big, I mean, occasionally there's a big wide shot up from the sky or something, but it's very occasional. It's
no Roland Emmerich allowed.
Yeah. And so,
only Paul Greengrass.
You're getting pieces of stuff, and the camera's missing stuff. It feels very immediate, and by doing that, you kind of got blinders on, so you don't have to, you know, not every shot has to be a big CG canvas, you know.
Yeah, well, and also when we were building, because we had the Oval Office from the very beginning, because it's in the first episode. And then as we were marching towards this episode over the course of the season, the production designer, he goes, "Oh, I need to build I need to build the situation room, and I need to build the Joint Chiefs room." And I remember Glenn and I were like, "Well, where are they?" And he goes, "What do you mean? I'm going to put them over there because we have a little space over there." I'm like, "No, I go, where are they in reality?" And he goes, "Well, I don't know." And then we started thinking about like, well, since we have to build this room for this episode and this room for that episode, why don't we build them where they are? And then we just sort of slowly, like a organism, we crept out and we built out into this giant, and we took over an entire soundstage of for the most part little of the White House, you know. So that was just, and so when we finally got to episode 7, you could walk through it and all the rooms were connected, and you know, it was such a luxury and little we had to add supplement it just slightly, but it was just such a luxury. So you could do that. You could do long takes, and so we were directing in a way we'd never directed before, which is 10 pages at a time. So we would go in and we would say, okay, we're going to go from this part of the script to this part of the script, which is could be as much as 10 pages. And so all the actors were off book, and we would go and we would just run through it over and over again with the camera guys just standing next to us and the sound guys standing next to us, not with any camera. And we would rehearse it and rehearse it and rehearse it. Okay, let's get the cameras up. And then we would shoot it. But oftentimes we wouldn't shoot until lunch. And every day the studio would come by the set and go, why aren't you guys shooting yet? Every day they panicked. And every day we would finally get shooting and we would be done in 2 or 3 hours. And then we'd go home early. You know,
I never knew
it was
that
so
about
much.
the schedule.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
it was so much fun. It was so much fun to do it. It was like rehearsed it like a play.
Yeah.
And then just shoot. And then when the shooting happens really quick once you get that all figured out. And the thing we kept saying during shooting that was like, anybody, and when we were rehearsing, anybody can say pause. You know, and people would say if they were confused, they didn't know where to go, didn't know where to stand, they would go pause. So we'd all just freeze. We have a little discussion, then we like action, and we continue on. So it was fun.
Yeah, and this was shot mostly in LA, right?
All
Yeah.
LA, yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
Julie?
remember getting the dailies. Like one of the first scenes was, you know, the outside, I'll call it like the bullpen area outside the war room. And like, you know, there's Xavier on his phone and Marcia, and then Baines comes by and trips and, you know, picks up his papers and then goes through this door. And just to see all those actors, James and everyone like waiting for the cue, it really, like you said, it felt like a play. I was like, oh, how cool. Like you don't usually see this. And I mean, I'll say one thing, like to the benefit of our schedule being so tight, you know, backlogged and overlapped. When I finally had a moment to really dive into this episode, a lot of it had been shot. So I was able to cut it linearly. And so I was like on the ride really with all the characters. And I think that really helped as well. Certainly by the time I got to the final act, because that really, like Sid said, that's like the big cathartic moment once they're on the plane. And I really felt that myself having gone through the ride. But like, yeah, I mean, the fact that you really did go from room to room with these characters and never left them, I think that gives a sense of space. Like you said, how did we pull this off? It's not many sets, it's not many rooms, but it conveys the bigger picture. And I think a lot of like the news footage we had on there that we incorporated pretty early on helps, you know, like back to the whole like, oh, it feels like COVID, or it feels like all those social unrest movements that really popped up during that time, like because everyone's just watching through a screen. Like that was another way that we really tried to up the tension, just like, you know, everyone glued to those TVs.
Yeah. Before I go, I'd be remiss if I asked, or didn't ask, if there's anything you all can tease about season 2, even if it's just the feeling. Like Sid, they've already shown that there's an Elvis element to season 2. Does that sort of inspire anything, or are you more just, oh, there we go.
There we go.
But yeah, are you all kind of getting to build off what you established in season 1, especially with the world expanding?
I mean, again, we're going to go, you know, see the past and the present, and the story widens.
Yeah, and we're going to continue to tell the story on a human scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sid, anything about the music?
I think the strength that I find with making stuff with everybody here and with Dan is that there's a lot of trusting of the audience and in the work that we do, and the season will open up on an episode that really will, you know, that really trusts the audience, and I feel like, you know, very proud of the work that I got to be a part of and that we all did this season. But I think we're taking a couple big swings And I think it's going to be really exciting for audiences.
Yeah. Julia, are you already in deep?
Yeah, we actually just locked my last episode 7. So yeah, we're pretty deep in there, and starting to see mixes and color reviews. So yeah, it's feeling very exciting to the idea that everyone will get to see it, because we have been working on it for the better part of a year. Yeah, I think this season feels like, I would use a word like exploratory. But the DNA, talking about the difference of like This Is Us to Paradise, I think from season 1 of Paradise to season 2, the DNA is just so still there, like the exploration of the past, and just exploring the human condition, and what do we do in the face of these large scale world events. Yeah, I think it all comes together in a really great way by the end of the season.
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited to see it. Just like I was so excited to talk to you all. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Marcus.
Thanks for talking to us.
Well done.
Thanks.
Yeah, this has been our Pass the Remote panel on Paradise, now streaming on Hulu.
Xavier, is a part of you happy that Cal is dead?